So, it's great to be back. And that's an old deal because it makes 15 years now. 15 years been doing this. Namaste, everyone. It is so good to be back here. My first day of a doubleheader. Unity this morning at 8:30, which is tough to get a teenager to come to, but thank God she's here for this one. And my mom, it's so good to have you all up here. So this month, the theme is in all things give thanks. And as Reverend Bonnie mentioned last week, that comes from Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, chapter 5, verse 18, which says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you." This could be loosely translated as using your Christ consciousness, be thankful in all circumstances. Paul reminds the church to be thankful in all things and in all circumstances so that they can have joy and a thankful heart and gratitude towards God. So that's about as churchy as it gets for me today, but that's where I didn't know where that came from. I'd heard that before, and well, I'll get into in all things give thanks in just a minute. But last year in mid-October, for about 6 weeks till the end of November, I lost 3 of my mentors. Interesting that they were all male mentors because most of the mentors in my life are women. So Reverend RJ, my spiritual mentor, made his transition, and that was in mid-October. And then about a week later, my business mentor, my general manager that works with me in the roofing company, Frank Bram, moved home to Kentucky. He retired to go home and take care of his mom. And then the day after Thanksgiving, my dad made his transition. My life mentor, my dad, made his transition. So I looked at this and I was thinking, man, in the course of like 6 weeks, 3 of the most influential people in my life, these men, are no longer there. So it says, in all things give thanks, not for all things give thanks. I was grateful when my dad passed that he was no longer in pain. I was grateful for what he taught me and how he raised me. I was grateful that he worked hard and he worked smart and provided for his family for so many years. I'm grateful that I still speak to him, and when I get really quiet, that I can listen to him. I'm grateful for many, many, many things when I think about my dad, but I'm not grateful for his passing. You know, there's a difference. Bonnie said last week, she quoted Thornton Wilder, and I thought this was perfect. The highest tribute to those who have passed is not grief, but gratitude. That is so cool. In all things, give thanks. So where is your focus? What are you giving your energy to when you're going through the fire, when you're going through that challenge, that situation, the divorce, the health scare, the lawsuit? Where's your mindset? Our challenge is to find something to be grateful for in the midst of our pain. Now, I'm a firm believer that you should acknowledge and experience whatever it is that has transpired, because, folks, it's happened. Whether it just happened, we co-created it, whatever, this thing is in our sphere of influence now and is saying, okay, now it's time for you to deal with me. So I'm not sure how it gets there. It's different for everybody, but it's there. So now we have to deal with it. I say experience and accept the emotions that go with this challenge. I say wallow in it. Get it all over you. It showed up for some reason. We might as well get the lesson from it. But then I also say pay attention to those emotions, because I believe in moving towards some things that we want and away from things that we don't want. I say pay attention to that so that it will become a blessing and motivation to move away from the pain. So if it ever raises its ugly head again, we can still move away from it. Find something to appreciate. Appreciation and gratitude are the building blocks of how human beings can change. Let that level of appreciation turn to gratitude, and then that vibration of gratitude is what will manifest as something more wonderful in life. So I thought about this after the last service. Everybody do me a favor, and in your space, do me a favor and point to where the past is. Okay? Interesting. It's kind of an NLP thing. Sometimes I look at that, because what I was saying in the first service is, first of all, we have this issue over here, the challenge, the thing that we don't want, that showed up or whatever. And then we have to think of something that we can appreciate, anything that you can find appreciation for. That's right here. Pat was telling me earlier that she was walking her dog in the park this morning in the beautiful, crisp air, the fact that she has a house, the fact that she had breakfast, whatever that you can appreciate. That appreciation then turns to gratitude, and then gratitude can help manifest joy. So I point this way when I do this, and maybe I should point back like that. When I do it, to me, my left is always the past. So if I did it, past, present, but anyway, just a different thought. Last year in August, Brenda and I and her mom took Baylor down to college in Austin to drop him off for his first year of school. But we knew that we would see him about every 4 weeks. We knew that we would see him for Mom's 75th and my sister's 50th birthday party in September, for Brenda's birthday, Baylor's birthday, and his mom share a birthday, all in October. Big month in our household. Saw him 4 weeks later. Then you see him for Thanksgiving, and we knew we'd see him for Christmas in December. Well, he's had a rough semester this year. It's just been a challenge. It's intense for him. And we haven't seen him since mid-August. And so it's been a little tougher for him and maybe his mom. They share that bond because they were born on the same day. So 2 weeks ago Sunday, I flew his mom down for the day. That's literally how much time he had, from 9 a.m. till about 9 p.m. So flew him down for the day. And I'd been mentioning to Baylor that he's smart enough to handle everything in school. He's strong enough to get through it. But if he did it that way, that it was going to take a lot out of him. I just reminded him if he would get quiet, be still, go within and listen to that small, still voice. If he'd just take a few minutes to relax and tap in, tune in, and turn on, that even though he'd still have to work hard, things would come easier. And it would be so much different for him. And that's what I had hoped for him. I reminded him that they had asked President Lincoln one time, they asked President Lincoln if he had 8 hours to cut down a tree, what would he do? And he said, I would sharpen my axe for the first 7. That's lining up our energy. That's what we need to do, is line up the energy and allow things to flow. So he and his mom had a great visit. It's funny how kids need their mom a little differently than they need their dad. Sometimes when I'm lucky, I get the big piece of chicken at dinner, but folks just really kids need their mom. So I asked Baylor, he was in a much better mood after he saw his mom. I said, buddy, what's the difference? And he said, Dad, I'm taking each day in the morning and I'm writing down 5 things that I'm grateful for. Something different every day. And that reminds me, Unity's Chris Chenoweth, he has a positive daily appreciation guide that he publishes in November that he puts out. And it's just to write down, it's a daily gratitude journal. And I used to buy a bunch of those and hand them out, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. But now I look at my life and I see that it's not just kind of cool, it's an absolute necessity to be focused on things that you can appreciate, find gratitude to create joy in your life. I want to manifest abundance and prosperity and joy and harmony and peace of mind above all else. And so I asked Bay about that. He said that's what he was doing. And just as a side note, it must be working because yesterday he and 3 other colleagues in the business school down there won a case competition and now get to go to California in February. And they won this. They even won some money, which is fantastic. Good thing he's not an athlete. He wouldn't be able to do that. But it was just wonderful. So that's working out for him. And now I need to check in with him to make sure that he's giving the proper appreciation and gratitude from where that energy came from, which I'm sure he is. In all things, give thanks. Whenever we've encountered a difficulty in our lives, the sooner we can shift our energy towards gratitude, the sooner that we'll create more joy and allow more abundance into our lives. I believe that gratitude heals our past while at the same time it's creating our future. In all things, give thanks. Last week, Bonnie, you talked about the past, the present, the future. It's that attitude of appreciation creates the gratitude. 4 years ago in August, we didn't have a single contract on the books. I didn't have a single job, and I didn't have one on the books. I was flat out freaked out. I didn't know what was going to happen. And in that time, the anxiety that overcomes you when you have people that you're working with and you want to help and keep the business going and stuff like that, I had to choose at that time literally to, in all things, give thanks. I had to be grateful for stuff that hadn't happened. I had to imagine and say to myself, in fact, I said earlier, I don't know that I've prayed and asked for anything in a long time. I just say, thank you for this stuff being done. And so that really taught me, because in doing that at that time, now we can't get out of the way of the great business. I mean, good, profitable work that comes to us, and we've been so grateful for that. But I had to be still and be quiet and ask for it and give thanks for it, I should say, in advance. And when you exercise that amount of faith, because you can fake it till you make it or faith it till you make it, when you start to do that, it's like a muscle. You got to use it or you lose it. And so I chose and I decided in that moment of despair, okay, I want to start creating something better, something nicer. And was very blessed when we do that. Because the energy that created the issue is not the same energy that's going to create the solution. So we're not going to find the solution by continuing to look at the problem. Again, I say look at the problem for a while. We created it. It's there. Let's enjoy it for a while. And then whatever that appropriate amount of time is, then shift, pivot, and find something that we can appreciate. The smell of the desert after the rain. Anything like that. Then we can pivot to what we can be grateful for, which then creates joy. So what are you listening to? What are you thinking about? What are you ruminating upon? What are you giving your energy to? Because this is like planning a future event. Abraham says, what future event are you planning? In all things, give thanks. So it was exactly 6 years ago this fall that my mom was recovering from 52 days in the hospital in West Nile virus. My dad had left the business to care for my mom. Reverend RJ is on my couch at home recovering from triple bypass surgery. I was leaving the office every day to go back and dress his wounds. I was dealing with the only lawsuit our company's ever faced, $1 million lawsuit. That was very interesting. And also going through the end of a 19-year marriage and the divorce and raising 2 kids as a single dad. Now, if that doesn't sound like the lyrics to a country western song, there's not one out there. So now, while I didn't necessarily give thanks in all things, what I did at that point in time was I only thought about what I wanted to create more of. So when I would think about my mom, I would see her happy, healthy, and whole. And I encouraged other people to do the same. So if somebody came up to you, oh, Bram, I heard about your mom. I'm just so sorry. And I'm going to pray for her. I'm like, wait a minute. You're going to pray for my mom? Let me tell you how you're going to pray for my mom. I wasn't pleasant about it. I was indignant about it. This is the most important person in my life. This is my mom. So, Bob, how do you know my mom? Oh, you know her from singing? Great. I want you to see her up on stage, dancing and singing, and see her at her highest and best. Folks, one of the greatest prayers you can do, the greatest energy we can give to anybody is see them at their highest and best. So that's what I saw, and I darn near begged people to see that for my mom. For Reverend RJ, all I had to do was close my eyes and envision him up here on the day that I met him, delivering a message, talking about the Spirit of God, which he does more eloquently than most folks that I could ever remember. That's how I would see him. The business things, whatever I would pray for me, I prayed for the people that were suing us. There was about a week there that I wasn't using my energy properly. And then I thought, I refuse to give anyone power over me by forcing me to hate them. I choose something different. So other than for my family, this other family, I've prayed more for them over the last 5-6 years than anybody else I know. But the thing that I was worried about is, what am I going to do with my kids? How am I going to raise my babies? Where am I going to get the money to take care of them? How is this going to work? Well, as you all are well aware, here's my beautiful mom, happy, healthy, and whole, doing fantastic, super blessed. Reverend RJ healed up, went on to get his doctorate, started his residency, and did his family counseling program, and did quite well with that. The company that sued us 6 years ago is now my largest client and most wonderful client. They came back 2 years ago, and we have an amazing relationship. An amazing relationship. And my children are happy and well-adjusted for no matter how much I try to mess them up. They're beautiful, wonderful souls, and largely in part because their mom and I are best friends. There's not enough money in the world to offset the love for children and see them happy and healthy and whole. So grateful for that. In all things, give thanks. Focusing on gratitude in advance is like flexing a muscle, I said. Saying thank you for what you already have received ignites manifestation. So on Sundays, when I can't make it to a service up here in El Paso, most often I'll be at home watching Oprah's Super Soul Sundays. And that entire program is really based on gratitude. You know, grace is its own energy system, if you will. Gratitude has its own energy field. And when you acknowledge and you're grateful for things, you have even more things that are drawn to you to be grateful for. Oprah says, I know it's not easy to be grateful all the time, but I've learned when it's you feel the least thankful that you're in most in need of what gratitude can give you, which is perspective. So remember, if we're criticizing, we're not being grateful. If we're complaining, we're not being grateful. If we're blaming, we're not being grateful. If we're rushing, we're not being grateful. If we're in a stinking bad mood, we're not being grateful. Gratitude can transform our lives. Are you allowing the minor things to get in the way of your transformation of the life you want, or can you give thanks in all things? Not for, but in the process, in the way, can you give thanks? In that book, the Super Soul series that Oprah compiled a bunch of interviews with, Tony Robbins, and I used this in here a couple of years ago, he talked about, if I can't be appreciative and grateful in this moment, right now, why do I need to write another book? Why do I need to buy another island? Why do I need to have another seminar? He said, I must be grateful in the moment. I must find something to appreciate. So he says it's really difficult to go from the poop, to go from the issue to what I call joy, he calls ecstasy. So he says you've got to see it for what it is, and then you got to change your energy and find anything to be appreciative for. That appreciation leads to gratitude. The gratitude leads to joy or ecstasy. Driving up here today, I was listening to a service. And the guy came out and said, now, I know you all think we do all this music thing just to liven you up or do this or whatever. And then it got me. It's to change our vibration, Mary Lynn. We all come in with the issues of the week that we've all compiled. Hopefully, we leave them at the door, but this is the place you're supposed to bring them anyway. But by listening to the music, that literally changes your vibration, so that you can see something different, feel something different, and that can lead to appreciation and gratitude and healing and wholeness. So, as always, the music, fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In all things, give thanks. So last Saturday, I had already prepared my message for today, which is shocking because it's usually about an hour before the service starts. And I'm always asked, what's your title? I'm like, I'll let you know when I get it. I have no idea. But I'd finished, for the most part, putting everything together, and I decided to drive to Ruidoso last Sunday morning. And I wanted something inspirational to listen to, so I pulled out my phone, and I knew I had some audio books of something. I hadn't listened to them in quite some time. And the first one that popped up, I assure you, is one that I did not purchase, one that I did not download, and yet there it is. I listened to it all the way up to Ruidoso, good 2-hour drive, a little more, and then all the way back. The book and the topic could not have been more perfect, and that's when I changed the title of my message today to the gratitude formula. I mean, part of it is, I've talked about, here's the issue, find something to appreciate, let that turn to gratitude, let that become joy. That's one way to look at a formula. But this gal named Mae McCarthy is her name, absolutely amazing author. She believes that success is not a secret, but rather a system. And after I read, or after I listened to the book, I couldn't agree more. So a couple of years ago, I told you all a little story about driving Brenda to swim practice one early Saturday morning. And it was in an economically challenged part of town where this pool is located in El Paso. And I said, sweet girl, I said, you realize that people live down here, right? And she said, yes. I said, do you think some of these folks work hard? She said, I'd like to think so. I said, as we drove by a big, beautiful mural on a wall of the Virgin of Guadalupe, I said, do you think these folks believe in God? That was kind of obvious at that point. I said, so sweetheart, does believing in God and working hard, does that ensure that you'll be prosperous and abundant and joyful and have peace and harmony in your life? And she said, I guess not. And it just made me think about those things. Is success a secret or is it a system? I mean, if any one of us can do it, that means every one of us can do it. Even Jesus said we would be able to do greater things than he did. But as I try to teach my kids, it's not by working harder or even working smarter. It's by tapping in, tuning in, turning on, to realize the presence of God. It's one thing to be a believer. That's all great. That's all fine and dandy. But to realize the presence is right here, right now, closer than our breath, ready and willing and able to be there for us, to me, I find that extraordinary. And I have to remind myself of that. The gratitude formula, I'd never heard of the book. Obviously, don't know how to got it on my phone, but it's there. I don't think it was ever marketed as a religious text or a spiritual text. Thank goodness that it wasn't, because it casted a wider net. Because the words that she uses in this, if you choose to read it, will hit home with you. And they're pure, and they're clean, and they're spiritual, and they're full of truth, and they're full of energy. I say that because May McCarthy talks about having a standing meeting every day with her business partner. And her business partner, in this instance, is her chief spiritual officer, her CSO. And you got to have that meeting every day. So I only have an hour left, so let me give you these 7 steps. Her 7 steps in this gratitude formula quickly are: number 1, upon waking, get up and read something inspirational for 5 or 10 minutes. I meditate for about half an hour most of the time, but every day I read Positive Christianity from Chris Chenoweth. It's about 5 or 10 minutes. And I read Abraham Hicks. That always raises my vibration. Number 2, write your goals down in your gratitude journal as if what you desire is already done. So I had to look back up one of my favorite quotes in scriptures that Reverend RJ, I heard from him. It's Mark 11, chapter 11, verse 24, which says, pray for anything, and if you believe you've already received it, it will be yours. So when you're talking about and you're writing this stuff down, believe that it's already done. So that's when I said I can't often recall when I ask for anything, not please God give me this, please God give me this. It's thank you for peace, love, and kumbaya. Thank you for, a great day. Believe that it's already done. There's a huge difference in the vibration of that energy versus asking for something. Number 3, speak out loud what you've written down in your gratitude journal with emotion. I remember when I was finishing up my career, probably the last 9 months at KDBC. Each day I would go into my office, close the door, and I had 2 pages of affirmations that I would read. Now, I would hope at this point, even back 11 years ago, that I had written them properly. Instead of asking, there's probably 50-50 asking and claiming. But I remember that it lacked emotion. It lacked energy. It lacked gratitude. It lacked appreciation. And it became rote. I could have memorized the whole thing. It was like, That's not the way to manifest. I finally did manifest, and it was painful. I got out of there, but it was painful. Not exactly what I would have created as a smooth transition. The 4th thing she talks about, this is all while you're still in bed, by the way, is using imagery. Imagine experiencing your goals. See yourself doing it. Hear yourself. Feel. Imagine. Vision yourself doing these things. That's all before you get out of bed. Then, during the day, paying attention to your intuition in the leads. That's what she calls them, leads that your CSO is giving you. To me, I just call it intuition. You're sitting at the traffic light. The hair raises up on the back of your neck, and you think, oh, that's that still small voice that's telling us things. But just say, for a minute, you're not quite sure. She says, ask the CSO for another lead. I need confirmation on this. Is this really what you're telling me to do? Because if it is, great. But if it's not, please shut that down. And that just reminds me of one of the great prayers that I learned years ago. And now I turn it into the thank you side. Thank you, God, for revealing what needs to be revealed, healing what needs to be healed. Thank you for leading me where you're needing me and guide me in ways that I totally understand. That's just got a little different energy to it. But paying attention to the intuition, the leads that the CSO gives you, and then when you act on one and it works, to celebrate and give thanks that you've acted on your intuition, you're flexing that muscle. And then the last thing, in bed at night, giving gratitude for the day, asking for and giving forgiveness wherever you need it, which was another thing that I thought was interesting. I always love it when Scripture can back up my hallucinations. Mark chapter 11, verse 24, speak as if it's already done. Believe that what you're asking for is already done. The very next verse is say, and you better give forgiveness for yourself and anybody else if you're not manifesting. I've always thought one of the biggest things, if we're not in the flow, if we're not creating or manifesting, is lack of forgiveness. And now it's written down in ink in a truth book, and so I'll believe it even more. It's important to remember as we describe our goals when we're writing things down to list what we want and not what we don't want, because the mind does not process negation. And when we're in the midst of the issue, we can't think stress, doubt, fear, worry out of our mind. You've got to substitute it. With the law of substitution, you must think of something else. That's how I started learning Scripture. I'd be in the issue over here, and then I thought, okay. And I've just, even if it was by rote, I had to do something that I could appreciate, and that's how I started speaking Scripture and learning it for myself to change my energy from the problem to at least appreciation, which leads to gratitude, which can lead to joy. 30 more minutes. Okay. I do want to leave you with a couple of quick quotes. Gratitude turns what we have into enough. Meister Eckhart says one of the greatest prayers you can ever say, if all you ever say is thank you, that's a big one. Gratitude makes sense of our past and brings peace for today and creates a vision for tomorrow. Willie Nelson said, when I started counting my blessings, my life turned around. Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. This one I really like. It says, none is more impoverished than the one who has no gratitude. That's not the part I like. The part I like is this. Gratitude is a currency that we can mint for ourselves and spend without fear of bankruptcy. Gratitude and attitude are not challenges, they are choices. And so it is. Thank you.